he stands alone, a king with nowhere left to go. The wind pulls at his robe. Salt hangs in the air. In front of him, only water, endless, cold. Not long ago, men bowed when he entered a room. Cities opened their gates before he even arrived. His name carried weight, real weight. Now, no one is coming. He turned slightly, as if expecting something behind him. An army, a messenger, a second chance. Nothing. I think that's the moment that matters. Not when empires fall, but when a man realizes they already have. He had land, more than most kings could dream of. Roads, markets, walls that had never been broken. And still, it wasn't enough. Because somewhere, a decision was made. It didn't feel like the end. It rarely does. A message ignored. A warning dismissed. A man underestimated. And now, here he is. A king standing at the edge of his world, with nowhere left to run. How does something so large disappear so fast? Was it really one moment? Or did it begin long before anyone noticed? He wasn't always alone. That's the part people forget. There was a time he couldn't walk 10 steps without someone lowering their head. Servants moved before he spoke. Doors opened before he reached them. Power does that. It makes the world feel arranged. Ala ad-Din Muhammad II sat high above the room. Not just on a throne. Above doubt. Or so it seemed. I think that matters. Because when everything works, you stop asking why. His empire stretched farther than most men could travel in a lifetime. Caravans crossed deserts carrying silk, spices, silver. Cities like Samarkand and Bukhara didn't just survive, they thrived. Markets were loud, walls were strong. People believed things would stay that way. And maybe that's the quiet danger. When nothing has broken yet, everything feels unbreakable. He trusted what he could see. Full granaries, busy roads, loyal governors, at least on the surface. But power has a way of hiding cracks, not removing them, just covering them. I've always found that unsettling, because the stronger something looks, the harder it is to question it. Somewhere in that comfort, something shifted. Not loudly. Not enough for anyone to panic. Just enough to be ignored. A message arrived. Routine at first glance. The kind of thing an empire handles every day. And he treated it like one. That's the moment I keep coming back to. Not because it looked important, but because it didn't. He had everything a ruler could want. Control. Reach, confidence. So why would he hesitate? Why would he doubt? When you've never been forced to, you usually don't. And maybe that's the real height of power. Not when you can command everything, but when you believe you don't need to question anything. So he made his choice, calmly, like a man who had time. But what if he didn't? What if the moment he felt most secure was the moment everything had already begun to slip. He didn't see it as a mistake. That's what makes it dangerous. To him, it was routine, a report, a suspicion, a decision. Far from the throne, at the gates of Otrar, a man made a call. A governor, confident, alert, maybe a little too certain. A caravan had arrived, merchants, camels, goods from the east. They didn't look like soldiers, but they didn't feel harmless either. I get that. When you're responsible for a border, doubt can feel like wisdom. So he chose caution, interrogation, detention. Then something shifted. Accusations followed. Tension grew. Lines were crossed, one by one. And just like that, the merchants were no longer merchants. They were treated as spies. It escalated fast, faster than it should have. Orders were given, lives were taken. No battle, no war drums, just a decision carried too far. I think this is where it becomes human, because no one wakes up planning to start a disaster. It builds, quietly. Word traveled, as it always does. Eventually, it reached a man far to the east, a man who valued loyalty and memory. Genghis Khan didn't respond with anger at first. He sent a message. Simple, direct. Return the man responsible. Make it right. And that could have been the end. That's the part people don't like to sit with, because it means there was still a choice. Back in the palace, the message was received. Ala ad-Din Muhammad II read it, or had it read to him. He had power, he had distance, he had no reason to feel threatened. So he answered the way powerful men sometimes do. Firm, certain, final. He refused. And more than that, he sent a message of his own. Not just in words, in action. I think that's the real moment. Not loud, not dramatic. Just a door, quietly closing. What feels like strength in one moment can look very different in the next. So let me ask you this. If you were him, with everything still intact, would you have done anything differently? You didn't see the army at first. No one did. What they saw was dust. A line on the horizon. Too wide to be a caravan. Too steady to be the wind. Someone pointed. Someone laughed it off. Someone kept working. That's usually how it begins. Not with panic, but with doubt. In the streets of Bukhara, a shopkeeper paused mid-sale. He looked up, just for a second. I imagine he told himself it was nothing, because most days it is. But this wasn't most days. The dust didn't fade. It grew. And then came the sound. Low at first, like distant thunder. Except the sky was clear. Horses, hundreds, then thousands. Moving like a single thought. I've always found that part hard to picture. Not the size, but the silence before it breaks. Gates closed. Not all at once. One by one. Messengers ran. Some arrived, some didn't. Inside the walls, people waited. That's what people do. They wait for clarity, for someone to say, "It's under control." But clarity came late. The army didn't surround the city all at once. It pressed, tested, watched. Patient? That kind of patience is unsettling, because it means they're not guessing. They already know. In Samarkand, the story felt familiar. Different walls, same fear. Leaders spoke with confidence. They had numbers. They had defenses. And maybe they believed it. Or maybe they needed others to believe it. I think there's a difference. Because belief can hold a city together. Until it can't. Days passed. Then something changed. Not one moment. Not one break. Just pressure. And then openings. Doors that didn't hold. Lines that didn't stay. People began to move. Quietly at first. Leaving homes, leaving things behind. Not running. Not yet. Just drifting away from something they couldn't name. I think that's the part we recognize, even now. That feeling, when something is wrong, but not fully visible. When staying feels risky, and leaving feels worse. Back in the palace, far from the walls, Ala ad-Din Muhammad II was still receiving reports. Numbers, positions, estimates. On paper, it didn't look like the end. And maybe that's the problem with distance. It softens reality. Out there, the storm had already arrived. Not all at once, but enough. Enough to change how people spoke, how they slept, how they looked at the horizon. So let me ask you this. When does a fall really begin? When the walls break? Or when people stop believing they will hold? You didn't wait for the walls to fall. That's important. You left before the end became visible, before certainty arrived. Ala ad-Din Muhammad II mounted his horse and chose distance over defense. I don't think that choice is as simple as it sounds. Staying means risking everything at once. Leaving spreads the loss out over time. So he moved. One city behind him, another ahead. The road was still his. For now. He arrived with urgency, left with even more. People still bowed. Some still believed. That's the strange part. Power doesn't disappear all at once. It lingers, even as it fades. He heard the same words in every place. We can hold. We have time. And maybe they meant it, or maybe they needed to say it out loud. I think he wanted to believe them, because believing buys you one more night of sleep. But the reports kept changing. Closer, faster, relentless. Genghis Khan didn't chase like other kings. He didn't rush. He closed distance, the way water fills space. Quiet, inevitable. That kind of pursuit wears a man down, not just his body, his certainty. So the king kept moving. Across dry plains, through cities that felt less welcoming each time. You began to arrive as a visitor, not a ruler. That shift matters. Because it happens before anyone says it out loud. Doors still opened, but slower. Eyes still lowered, but not for long. I've always thought that's when a man starts to understand. Not when he loses everything, but when he notices things changing. He rode longer, slept less. The map in his mind started to shrink. Land he once commanded became land he passed through. That's a hard thing to feel, to move through your own empire like you don't belong to it anymore. And still, he kept going, because stopping would mean facing it. And movement creates the illusion of control. Another city, another departure. Again, he fled. And again. And again. Until the pattern became the story. I think we all recognize that instinct. To keep moving, hoping the next place will be different. But what if the problem isn't the place? What if it's already caught up with you? So let me ask you this. At what point does escape stop being a strategy and start becoming a confession? He stopped running, not because he wanted to, but because there was nowhere left to go. The land ended. Water began. Ala ad-Din Muhammad II stood at the edge of the sea, the same man who once stood at the center of everything. I think that contrast says more than any battle ever could. Behind him, no army, no city waiting to open its gates, no voice calling his name. Just distance. He had crossed his empire piece by piece, not ruling it, but passing through it. And now, even that was gone. There's something final about water. You can't negotiate with it. You can't move past it. So he stayed. On a small island, quiet, exposed, not a fortress, not a refuge. Just a place that hadn't been taken yet. That's different. Because hiding is not the same as being safe. Days blurred together. The wind didn't change. The waves didn't stop. I imagine time felt heavier there, slower, but harder. No decisions left to make. No messages to answer. Just memory. He had built something vast, or at least held it together for a time. And now he stood outside of it, like a man looking at a house that no longer belongs to him. I've always found that image difficult to shake, because loss doesn't always happen all at once. Sometimes it arrives in layers. First the distance, then the silence, then the understanding. And I think by the time he reached that shore, he understood. Not all at once, but enough. He died there, far from the cities that once carried his name. No ceremony. No great ending, just a quiet absence. And maybe that's what surprises people. Not how loud history can be, but how quiet it often is. So let me ask you this. When everything is taken away, what actually remains? And is that the part we ignore the most? He is gone. No crown, No court, no voice left to answer. And yet, the question stays. Not about the empire, but about the moment. I think we like to believe collapse is loud, obvious, something you can point to. But most of the time, it isn't. It's a choice that feels reasonable, a warning that feels distant, a step that feels small. Until it isn't. And by the time we see it clearly, we're already standing at the edge. So maybe it didn't fall in a single night. But to the man living it, it might have felt that way.